Hey, welcome to Taboo Talk with Sarah, the podcast that breaks the silence, fosters hope, and talks about the tough stuff so you never have to feel alone. I'm your host, Sarah Jordan Ross. I am the proud mum of 3 amazing boys. I'm raising them here in beautiful Tasmania with my husband, Jeff. Life is full of challenges, joys, and lessons, and that's what this podcast is all about, sharing real conversations that matter. Today, we're talking about a topic that affects all of us in one way or another. That is mental health. Now, mental health underpins everything else in our lives. So it's a really important conversation, but we sometimes shy away from it. So today, I'm going to explore what's going on that's leading to these challenges, how chronic stress impacts our minds and our bodies, but most importantly, what we can do to heal and also to help and support each other. We'll unpack some hard truths, share stories of struggle and hope, and talk about the role community and connection have in finding the support that we need. Sometimes that community and the connection is the help and support we need. But before I get into all of that, I want to share with you about a product that has been a game changer for me in my mental health journey. In many ways, you could say that Taboo Talk is brought to you by Happy Juice from Amare, because without it, there is no way I would be sitting in this chair talking to you and tackling the topics that we're going to cover in Taboo Talk with Sarah. Now, Happy Juice isn't just a drink. It's designed specifically to support your gut microbiome and your gut-brain connection. I will talk later in the podcast about how chronic stress affects these. And that is knowing that is part of why I went looking specifically for something that would help me. And that's when I found Happy Juice. And it has helped me to manage my stress. It's boosted my mood. It helps me to show up as the best version of myself without my maladaptive stress response getting in the way. I loved it so much, and it's helped me so much that I decided to become an affiliate. Because I believe in the products, I use them, and I know what a difference they make. And I think when we find something that we know can help somebody, we should share it when we can and when it's appropriate. So if you're curious, think it might help you too, then please reach out and I'd love to have a chat with you about that. But for right now, let's get into talking mental health and what's going on there. So let's start by taking a look at the big picture. Mental health challenges are rising at an alarming rate, and some of the statistics are heartbreaking. Now, while these statistics I'm sharing are Australian, it is a global problem, with nearly 40% of young Australians between the ages of 16 and 24 having experienced a mental health disorder. ADHD affects 8.2% of our children, and anxiety disorders impact 6.9%. So often, families with these children, with these diagnoses, are left feeling overwhelmed, isolated, and without a clue where to turn or what they can do. And this next one is the one that breaks my heart. Suicide is the leading cause of death for young people aged between 15 and 24. That being that high asks the question, what on earth is going on? What have we done? And how can we fix it? The other one, postnatal depression, affects 1 in 5 new mums. The rates of depression and anxiety are climbing across all age groups. Now, these numbers, they aren't just statistics. They represent real people, real families, real struggles. And we'll go into more detail of some of those stories as we go on. For example, a mum who's suffering from postnatal depression She's struggling to navigate her own mental health challenges and trying to be there for her family. It's overwhelming. Small, consistent changes, and sometimes just having conversations with another mum who gets it can be what makes the difference. We'll talk about some of the changes you can make that just might help, because healing is possible. And sometimes that healing starts just by having a conversation. A friend of mine shared with me that years ago, she was suffering postnatal depression, but didn't even know what it was. Her daughter is now in her 30s. And lots of things have changed, but my friend was wondering if some of the effects of her challenges have carried on to affect her daughter. And it's quite possible that they have. But my friend did also share that one of the things that made a difference to her was actually just being able to talk to a mum's group and say, hey, is this normal? What's going on? And getting that, yeah, you're not alone. And that's part of why we started this podcast, is to remind you that no matter what's going on, there will be somebody out there who gets it. So just start talking. Now, all of those statistics and the stories, they beg the question, what is going on? Why are mental health challenges rising so dramatically? Why has there been such a big increase? I wish there was a simple answer, but like with most problems, there's not. It's multifaceted. But some of the key factors that stand out in it is cultural and societal pressure. Our world has changed. And social media, while it can be a great tool when used for good, it can also be a big problem, particularly when you take into account that most of what people share on Facebook, it's their highlight reel. It's the things that we want people to know about, those things that we openly talk about. Thing is, when somebody's struggling and they're seeing that, they can't help but compare that person's highlight reel to their real life and find themselves lacking by comparison. Why don't I feel like that? Why don't I look like that? Why isn't my life that great? Chances are the other person's highlight, when you're not just looking at the highlight reel, their real life reel might look just like yours. But we tend to compare. It's human. We all like to know what's going on the other side of the fence. Then there's childhood trauma and disconnection. And not just disconnection from other people, but also from ourselves. And as Gabor Mate says, trauma doesn't have to be traumatic and dramatic to be damaging. It's often about that disconnection and that isolation. And we've gotten increasingly isolated in this world, where once we were part of thriving communities where everyone helped each other, we're now very much I'll do it myself. And that can be a problem because we weren't meant to do things in isolation. Then you can look at systemic failures. Access to mental health care is limited. It's not what it should be. And many families end up feeling unsupported in navigating challenges like autism, ADHD, and postnatal depression. You also add to it that access to specialized services can be even further limited by isolation. If you are in rural and regional communities, your access to specialist services can be very limited. It can involve long distances of travel. And then there's the wait lists to actually get to see anybody. Now, I'm in Tasmania. I have a child with ADHD. I went through the private system and was lucky enough, but I still took nearly a year to get to see someone. And it was only that I got onto the cancellation list. The public system wait list at present is 2.5 years to get to see a pediatrician or a psychologist in order to diagnose ADHD and then to be able to access help and support. Now, 2 years for a child who is struggling is a very long time. That's something that we need to look at and say, hey, what can we do? I wish I had the answer for that one, but I really don't. And then there's that little thing called a pandemic that kind of turned our world upside down, and it has made the problem even worse. Our routines got disrupted. Our worlds got turned upside down. We became increasingly isolated, especially for young people. I know my kids were in early grades of school when the pandemic happened, but I can't help but wonder the effects that those couple of years of isolation had on our youth, on slightly older children than mine. Now, I know a lot of people who struggled with anxiety after the pandemic. They'd become increasingly isolated. Things were uncertain, even for my own family. My husband had a thriving business prior to COVID, digital marketing agency that specialized in helping gyms and massage therapists get their message out there. Those businesses all went into shutdown in COVID. So his business disappeared overnight. And we also had okay, what do we do now? And I had started my massage clinic in January 2020 when COVID hit in March. Now, I was lucky. I made it through, but it was because my 25 years experience in this space gave me the tools I needed to help navigate that. So let's talk about stress. That thing that we all have that, we need a little bit of it, because if we didn't have any stress at all, we wouldn't get out of bed in the morning. But when it goes on for too long and is too much, it causes big problems. One reason why is because when we are in fight or flight, all of the blood from our digestive system gets diverted to our muscles so we can fight the threat or run away. Now, that's great when saber-toothed tiger's chasing you, but that doesn't happen all day, every day. And when we are stuck in that, we start to see problems. It affects our digestion. Now, you've probably heard of a little thing called the gut microbiome, and that it is our second brain. A lot of our neurotransmitters are actually made in our gut, and disturbing our gut microbiome creates hormonal imbalances, can weaken our immune system, and it affects the way that we cope with stress, because it affects and disrupts those signals between our gut and our brain. So we need to find ways to switch that off, to get out of that fight and flight response and back into rest and repair. When we're not getting into rest and repair, that's when we run into more problems. So it becomes a nasty cycle. Now, Alex Howard has written some great books, has done amazing work in this space. And it's what he calls a maladaptive stress response. So our bodies stay in that survival mode long after the saber-toothed tiger's gone away and forgotten all about us. It leads to burnout, it leads to anxiety, and it can cause physical illnesses. Now, I don't have it. Now, I have a maladaptive stress response, partly because when I was much younger, I got glandular fever, Barmer forest fever, and CMV all at the same time, and my immune system and everything else packed it in, and my nervous system ended up being completely dysregulated. So I don't just do the fight or flight thing, I go straight into freeze and shutdown. But there are lots of things that I have learnt over time of dealing with that can make a really big difference. And when we start looking at what is going on for us, not just on a physical level, but that mental, emotional as well, and start looking at us as a whole person and seeing what we can do to integrate all of that and to get all of our systems talking to each other nicely again and working together the way that they're supposed to. The body is incredible at healing when we give it the right tools. So I'm going to tell you a few things that you can do that can minimize your stress and that can help us cope with some of the mental challenges that we're seeing at the moment. Anxiety, depression, these aren't how we're supposed to be. Doing life in isolation and feeling helpless and alone, that is not what we were designed for. So there is lots of things we can do to help support our mental health. One of them, prioritize connection. We run into trouble when we try to do everything all by ourselves. Healing happens in relationships. Now, whether that's family, friends, or a supportive community, we need to have those conversations. We need to know that there is people around us who have our back. We were designed to do life in community. There is a reason that it's said that it takes a village to raise a child, because when you raise healthy children in a healthy village, we get healthy families, healthy communities that thrive. And sometimes it's just being in one of those groups that you can say how you're feeling and they just get it. So don't try to do everything all by yourself. Find those people that will help you carry the load. And then we can normalize mental health conversations. As Brené Brown puts it, shame thrives in silence. But talking openly about mental health can break down the stigma associated with that and can encourage people to seek help. Also, Brené Brown's work on empathy and connection is really great here, in that sometimes we just need somebody to sit beside us, to get in the trenches with us and help us find our way out, to shine the light for us when we've lost our own. And then taking care of that nasty chronic stress holistically, being as kind to yourself when you're struggling as you can. And it's practices like mindfulness, yoga, meditation, nutrition, doing things that help to support your gut microbiome and in turn your nervous system regulation, helps to promote healing. And then it's supporting families, peer groups, accessible resources, and even small acts of kindness can help make a huge difference for families navigating mental health challenges. Sometimes you just want to know that you're not the only one. And really, we're not. I love talking to a friend of mine who has special needs kids. How she puts it is that they're a bit extra. And she actually started a group specifically for mums of kids with neurodiversity to help foster those connections and that community and yep, I get it. I hear you. I see you. I understand where you're at. We need groups like that. For me, when I was talking to her, and she shared a story of an older mum talking to her and saying, I love my children dearly. Or an older mum telling her that it's okay. You love them dearly. It's okay to not like them sometimes. And truth be told, this parenting gig, it's a tough one. And some days our kids push our buttons. One of the ways I know I'm getting into trouble, that my nervous system is dysregulated, is when I start snapping at my kids, or little things that wouldn't normally bother me annoy the crap out of me. That's when I know that I am stressed, and if I don't do something about it, I'm going to run into trouble. So that's when I pick up the phone and talk to a friend, or I go for a walk, or I make sure that I'm taking my happy juice. Little things done consistently can make a huge change. And it's just remembering that you're not alone. I'd love to thank you for joining me on this episode of Taboo Talk with Sarah. If anything I've said resonates with you, I would love to hear from you. Do you have questions about mental health, holistic healing, or anything I talked about today? Or do you have a story to share about your own experience with these challenges and what helped you along the way? Let me know in the comments or send me a message. Your stories, your questions, that's what's going to help shape this podcast and keep these important conversations going. There are so many people struggling with mental health issues. They need to know that they're not alone. And talking is just one way we can do that. I'd also love to know if there's any topics that you'd like me to cover in upcoming episodes, whether it's more work on mental health, which actually our next episode, I have a very special guest joining me, and we're going to be talking about youth mental health and a few other things. So I would love for you to join me on that. And let me know if there's anything else that you want me to dive into, or if there's anyone you think I should strike up a conversation with. So if you found anything on today's episode helpful, please share it with someone who might need it, because sometimes all it takes is one conversation to make a difference. And finally, I want to encourage you, whatever you're going through, just keep talking, keep reaching out, keep asking questions, and keep sharing your story. Healing happens in connection, not in isolation. So even if it feels tough, even if it feels messy, just keep talking. You're not alone. You are stronger than you think. And until next time, take care of yourself, take care of each other. And I'll see you next time.